Howdy, my name is Nik Muhammad Rashid bin Nik Zurin. I am the editor at Project Pertiwi, which is a platform that has been made by Malaysians for Malaysians to talk about defence issues. So what are our national security problems? In 1989, we signed the Hat Yai Peace Accords that ended the Second Communist Insurgency, and also the Berlin Wall fell. So that was the end of the Cold War, and for 30 years we've experienced relative peace. But that doesn't mean that our country is free continuously of any forms of national security threats. So what are we concerned about today? So at sea, we are being constantly challenged not only by great powers such as the United States and the People's Republic of China. We're also concerned about some of the activities that are carried out by our neighbours. This includes illegal fishing and the trafficking and smuggling of humans by sea. And on land, it's not that much different. Across land borders, we have a lot of illegal activities that we're worried about that pose direct security risks to our people. And sometimes our enemies are a little bit more sophisticated. They use cyber technology to conduct their illegal activities and to coordinate their illegal activities. So how do we solve all of these problems? It's common among many countries around the world to issue a national strategic security document called the Defence White Paper. And this is what Malaysia did in December of 2019. Well, one of the things that the Defence White Paper does is it identifies the strategic concerns that we are worried about, and it plans and proposes how to use resources to combat those concerns. So one of the main ideas that we've introduced in the Defence White Paper is this idea that Malaysia is a maritime nation with continental roots. It is both comprised of major land areas as well as sea areas. How does that define our defence thinking? This is where the three pillars come in. So the first pillar suggested by the Defence White Paper is concentric deterrence, the second is credible partnerships, and the third is comprehensive defence. So what is concentric deterrence? Concentric deterrence is the idea that Malaysia is split into three layers. The core, the forward, and the extended. The core areas refer to the primary areas where we live and where we work on land. So these are your major cities and all the highways and the airports that connect them. And also, of course, not forgetting the cyber infrastructure. Then you have the extended area. And then you have the forward area. So because Malaysia is split into two different land masses, which is Peninsular Malaysia or West Malaysia, and East Malaysia, which is Sabah and Sarawak, you have a situation called two theatres. So this presents us with a difficult geographic challenge. Malaysia has to maintain forces simultaneously in two different theatres, which is West Malaysia and East Malaysia. Lahad Datu sort of reinforced the importance of this concept. So these two theatres present us with four different domains: land, air, sea, and cyber. Land is important because that's where we live, that's where most of our social, economic, and political activities take place. Sea and air is important because it's a major logistical lifeline as well as facilitates much of our economic activity. And cyber is important because it allows us to connect with each other nearly instantaneously and let us enjoy the wonders of the internet. So what does that mean for the Malaysian Armed Forces? The first thing is the Malaysian Armed Forces needs to be able to operate in two theatres simultaneously. The second implication is that the Malaysian Armed Forces needs to be able to conduct multi-domain operations. That is, to exist in land, air, sea, and cyber spaces at the same time. In practice, what this means is the Malaysian Armed Forces needs to adopt a joint combatant command structure where each of the service branches must be mutually supporting each other in any given operation. The second pillar is credible partnerships. We have to understand that Malaysia is placed along the Straits of Malacca and next to the South China Sea. This is a major transportation hub between the great powers of the world, China and the United States. Malaysia has always occupied this part of the world, and we've always been the bridging linchpin between the world powers of the old days, and now we continue to play that role. Because of this, we are in a very unique position to punch above our weight. In order to do this, we need to conduct what's called defense diplomacy, which is to maintain representations of our armed forces around the world in our embassies. This opens up lines of communication with foreign military officers and their chiefs of staff, as well as gives us a channel to de-escalate situations whenever they arise. With these channels, we are able to facilitate bilateral or multilateral exercises, which allows us to reinforce positive cultures and norms within military forces around the world, as well as provide our soldiers with opportunities for training that they would not necessarily get in Malaysia. So the third pillar is the concept of comprehensive defense. Malaysia is one of the countries that pioneered this concept of KESBAN, which is Keselamatan dan Pembangunan, or Security and Economic Development. This is a multidisciplinary approach that involves not just the armed forces, but also other civilian agencies that are responsible for economic and social activities. This concept was highly successful during the Cold War, which enabled Malaysia to develop its economy rapidly in the 70s and 80s, while also being able to defeat a communist insurgency. In today's world, KESBAN is more relevant than ever. The COVID-19 pandemic has shown that you need both the armed forces and civilian agencies to work together in a common security framework to protect not only the people's health against the virus, but also ensure that their economic security and livelihood are maintained. We must understand that there is a virtuous cycle that exists between the economics and security of a country. Security creates conditions of peace. Peace is necessary to do business. Businesses can then be taxed and then pay for security. And so the cycle keeps continuing. So why is the Defence White Paper such a significant milestone of Malaysia's defence sector progress? It is an unprecedented engagement that has involved former members of the armed forces, current members of the armed forces, defence industry players, civil society organisations, academics, and most importantly, many other civilian agencies that were previously not as involved in the entire process. Because the Defence White Paper defines clearly our national interests, as well as the means and the resources to defend them, it acts as a reference point for many other follow-on documents and policies related to national security and national defence. Furthermore, in the spirit of transparency, it also allows our partners to better understand what we think are our problems and enables them to be more productive partners when it comes to national security and national defence. The Defence White Paper also represents a significant milestone in the maturity of our democracy and politics. It was passed in Parliament with a bipartisan consensus. This is good because no matter who is the government of the day, there is at least a commitment to pursue common defence goals which are long-term in nature. We have to remember that defending this country is a responsibility of every Malaysian regardless of their creed, their religion and their political alignment. So where does that leave us when it comes to defence reform? Malaysians need to look out for 3 different documents that the government has to produce by 2022. All these 3 plans have a due date of between the year 2021 and 2022. Our responsibility as Malaysian citizens is to hold our government accountable and make sure that they follow through with these plans. The first thing we need to do is to show interest in the subject and keep the conversation going. Secondly, we need to make sure that our members of Parliament are informed about our defence concerns and get them to debate these plans in Parliament to create a robust and realistic discourse. By doing so, we will ensure that the government takes our defence concerns seriously and will follow through on the promises and commitments that they've made with this Defence White Paper. Ultimately, with the realisation of the Defence White Paper's aspirations and goals, we will create a safer Malaysia for us and our children, while also making sure that our armed forces are trained and equipped for the right missions at the right time at the right place. Thank you.